This is Grandmaster Carl Nakamura, number 3 in the world. Here's a little bit about Carl if you want to pause the video. My buddy from the United States, Carl Nakamura. This is David Navara from the Czech Republic. A little bit about David. Quite a great player, rated 2706. You want to pause the video and read about David? This is the other player in the match in Czechoslovakia. Hi folks, John Cordisco back again. My buddy Carl Nakamura from the United States. He's playing in a match against David Navara from the Czech Republic. They're playing in Czechoslovakia. If you go online to 2700chess.com and scroll down, you'll see the tournaments will have the website address. A lot of pictures, pretty cool. Anyway, it's unfortunate that Carl isn't playing in Norway chess, but he's still my buddy. I still like him. This is a really good game. Interesting. David Navara from Czech Republic is white and Carl Nakamura from the United States as black. Let's get to it. What else? King's Indian. Gotta love it. Scroll through a few of the moves here. I won't go through the opening too much. Castle. H3. Putting this bishop here would be incredibly annoying. A pin on this. E5. Black strikes first at the center. And white closes it up. Now, most of you think that dark squared bishop on G7 is pretty useless, but this is the King's Indian, and those kingside pawns for black are going to be moving pretty soon here. A5, bishop, knight A6. This is all theory for these guys, I have absolutely no doubt. Knight to D2. Got my chess Fritz 13 computer on off screen. It's a tiny advantage for black. Queen to E8. Interesting. It's a really annoying pin on that knight. By moving the queen, it just avoids the pin. And of course, the knight's protected by the G7 bishop. Bishop to E2. Just get developed. Knight to D7. We know what's coming soon. A3. Just to stop. Knight to B4. And knight to B6. We see a lot of action on the queen side. I'm not a King's Indian player, but I like to see a lot of action on the king side. We'll see how it works out. If black had gone F6 instead, which I thought was a decent move, bishop to E3, F5. Here we go. Typical King's Indian with the F pawn being moved. E takes, G takes, F4. And there we are. That's the King's Indian that I know. After knight to B6, bishop to E3. Black's a little crampy, should be okay. Bishop D7, B3, F5. Here it comes, the F5 move that we see all the time in a King's Indian. Let's try to break down the pawn chain a little bit. Knight to B5. If white had castled instead, queen to D8 would have been a decent move. After knight to B5, queen goes back to D8. Now, I'm not criticizing Carl. I'm sure this is all still theory, but I know he moved the queen once. I'm a little surprised, but maybe that is the theory. He wants to move the knight on A6 here, but to do that, he'll leave this pawn unguarded, so that must be the reason for that. And plus the fact this bishop isn't a threat anymore against the queen. Bishop takes, pawn takes, knight takes, knight to C6. Now, Carl's giving up a pawn. We'll have to see how this works out. I'm sure this is all still theory. Castles, bishop H6, B4. He's taking away the guard of the B7 pawn. Shows a quarter of a pawn advantage for white at this point. Bishop to A4, hitting the queen. Queen has to move. Queen takes the knight. Pawn takes. Queen takes. Knight to F3. That was pretty much a not exchange, but interesting position, though, I do have to say, with those white center pawns and black's 3 pawns coming down the board. We'll see how this works out. This bishop's in a really good spot. He's covering a lot of key squares here. I mean, all these squares are very key squares for white. I like a Carl's position, and the computer shows about a half pawn advantage for black. F takes, queen takes, not as good as knight takes, because after bishop g7, pitting the knight, knight g4, h5 is the computer's choices. After queen takes, rook a to e8. After rook a to e8, computer shows almost half point advantage for black, but I like the rooks here. And I like the queen bearing down. This bishop, I'm not too sure what he's going to do with him yet. Queen to h4, hitting the bishop. Now, if you're wondering what would happen if knight had taken e5, bishop, rook a2, bishop takes, and you're down a piece. So those free pawns, guys, aren't so free. King guards the bishop. He likes that bishop there. He's guarding a lot of key squares. Knight to g5, trying to put the blunt on the bishop at the same time, get his knight in the king area. Carl doesn't want to take. That's a good bishop. Rook to f4, hitting the queen. Queen moves. Now he takes, and when queen takes, it's bishop b3. Now the computer did that. It's showing that black is ganging up on white's c4 pawn. Yeah, pretty funny. a4. Rook to e4. Interesting might have been if after bishop takes, rook a to c1, queen takes d5. 2 pawns up for black, but it only shows a point advantage for black in the score. I don't think black's pieces are that coordinated, to be honest with you. After rook to e4, rook f to e1, queen to d4. Carl's trying to get that queen down in there, cause some damage. Black's king looks a little exposed, but I think he's okay. Bishop to f1. Worth considering, I think, might have been bishop to f3. Then after rook takes, bishop takes, queen to c1. Computer shows this is dead even though black's up a pawn. But that's a weird position, I gotta tell you. After bishop to f1, rook takes. Now, white is going after the isolated pawn on e5. Bishop takes, h4, bishop d7. Here comes that bishop, finally comes back to life. And h5. And it looks like white's putting some pressure on black. That pawn on h5 is very menacing there. Queen to f4. Carl's going for a trade of queens. Queen takes, pawn takes. Now the pawns aren't isolated anymore, as you can see. They're all connected on this side of the board. White's got a passer on d5, but it shows a pretty good advantage for black. And if you're counting, black's up a pawn. Now look at this. Look at these pawns here. I want to see how this works out for black. Looks pretty good though. Carl's in a good spot. Rook to b1. b5. Black's trying to open it up. C takes. Now, what would have happened if black took instead of took the pawn? Rook takes, bishop, rook checks, king, rook checks, king, f3. Dead even. So that wasn't the way to go for Carl. After b5, c takes, b6. Now if you notice now, Carl has both of his A and B pawns on dark squares. Does that worry about babysitting them for the bishop going after him? And a b5 pawn for white's isolated on a light square. So that looks pretty good for a Carl. The computer bears that out. It's about a 1.5 advantage. Rook to c1. Carl wants to trade. He's got that passed A pawn. Navara passes on trading, and rook to E8. He wants to trade again. Rook to C1, rook to C8. Now they're on move 38 now. I think what these guys are doing, I'm not sure on the time situation, but I think they were just picking up a couple of moves to get closer to the time control of 40 moves. Rook to E1, and Carl was not going along with the draw, of course. King to F6, H takes, H takes. If instead he had gone D6, pawn takes, rook E7, bishop F5, with a pretty good advantage for black. Now the next few moves, you're going to see some really interesting technique by Carl. After H takes, D6. And I'll tell you, that D pawn looks very menacing, but it's not. That bishop is a really good blockader there. Black's in a lot of trouble. Rook to C5. I think this is where the pressure gets to David Navara. He moves rook to E4. And now the computer is way over 4 points advantage for black. The computer suggests G3, then after F takes, it's still bad. But David miscalculated when rook to E4, rook to C1. Now you're going to see something really slick here. David takes the pawn, check, king, check. King takes, check, king to E6. And he goes rook to C4, trying to trade. Now look at this position, folks. You're black. And white just went rook to C4. You take the rook on C4. And bishop takes and you just trade. It was still a really good game. But look at the winning move for Carl. This is the winning move. If you want to pause the video and look at it, do so now before I show you the move. And that's rook takes F1 check. If king takes, bishop takes pawn, pinning the rook. The king has to move, and then rook takes. And you're a full piece and a pawn up. The game's over. Great move by Carl. Tough break at the end for David Navara. So that's the game, folks. Round one of the match in Czechoslovakia between Carl Nakamura from the United States and David Navara from the Czech Republic. I hope you enjoyed it. I always like showing my buddy Carl's games. Really neat twist and tactic at the end by Carl. Well done. Anyway, folks, just want you all to remember, if you think chess is just a game, you're not playing it right. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
It's hard to fall asleep when some of the things you've eaten insist on staying up past your bedtime. If there are little things still kicking around, your stomach is going to keep you awake. Unless you take Alka-Seltzer. Those soothing alkalizers in Alka-Seltzer can quiet an upset stomach, and Alka-Seltzer's bubbles help bubble your stomach's troubles away. Ouch! Alka-Seltzer before bedtime. If your stomach doesn't get a good night's rest, neither will you.